All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serious Angler Podcast, powered by our friends over at X2 Power Batteries. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Egbrett, and I am captainless today. Andy is out. He's got a lot going on today. We're actually filming this show a few days before it airs because you guys are used to having a live show tonight. But Andy and I are currently, probably when you guys are listening to this, if you're listening to it on Tuesday, this dropped Tuesday morning. Andy and I are on our way down to Charlotte, North Carolina for REDCREST. So we'll be down there, and that's probably why you guys are not getting a live show tonight. That's why you guys got one this morning, Tuesday. We have a special guest today. We have Mr. Chris Lane, who recently just won the BPT down the Kissimmee Chain, and we're gonna be talking with him about that. We're gonna get him on here real fast, but before we get him on, we're gonna be talking about his win and also kind of doing a little preview of Major League Fishing's REDCREST coming up this week on Lake Norman. Before we get into that, really quick message for you guys. If you didn't see it on social yesterday, I know a bunch of you guys have been asking for it. Our friends at Do It Molds are running a special discount for this week. Now that it's the buying season, especially getting you guys' own custom tackle done. If you guys want any new molds or just getting set up in the first place, we have a code Serious15 that's good from March 6th to the 12th. And we actually have another sale coming up soon, but March 6th to the 12th, Serious 15, you guys can get save 15% off your entire order at Do It Molds if you guys want to start creating your own tackle. But beyond that, again, like I mentioned, this is REDCREST week. If you guys are going to be here, let us know. We're going to be doing shows around takeoff for the guys this week that are fishing REDCREST. We'll be at the expo throughout the days, especially at the X2 Power booth. But beyond that, hope you guys, if you're making it, let us know. But I think without further ado here, let's get Mr. Chris Lane on. Chris, how's it going, man?
And I'm actually on my way to REDCREST right now.
I was gonna ask. So we are very gracious of Chris today that was able to hop on while he's making his drive. Of course, very busy man after your win, as always, as all winners are. You guys get slam packed like 2 weeks afterwards. You have no free time basically.
Yeah, it's been wide open, a lot of phone calls, and I appreciate you guys pushing this back. So you get home, I got a bunch of kids and a wife, though it's like you're spending time with them, but you don't want to be on the phone the whole time either. So this works out really good.
Yeah, and that is the last thing that we like to get winners on when it's fresh and kind of give a different spin on things. But Andy and I, the last thing we ever want to do is get in the way of your guys' family time, because we know, especially this time of year, it's very minimal, and especially when you got kids that are growing up through the ranks. I mean, obviously your son was competing on Clark Hill this week, so it was it's not something we ever want to get in the way of. That's for sure.
No, man, we greatly appreciated it. It was awesome, man. It's been a crazy week, but hey, it's better than not having anybody call you too at the same time. So, what a win! I still wasn't expecting it. It's still sinking in. Every time I just kind of think about it, or somebody mentions something to me about it, I'm like, I still can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, the guys, they said it, and Panger said it on BTL as one of the greatest finishes of live bass fishing, and I think that that holds very true. Just like, I think just the look on your face, man, when you were squatted down at the end of it, you're like, "Say what? Say that again!" Like that alone was the coolest part. You just didn't even realize that
Yeah,
had been the coolest, like, what was going on in your head of like, man, like you grinded it out, you got that big bite, but like, it wasn't a 7-pounder. And then you're like, say what? I actually won. I think that was probably the coolest part for you.
yeah. Well, I'll let you know what was going through my head at that point in time. I was thinking from like our old format, so I'm thinking 4 pounds, 12 ounces. I'm thinking, okay, I got to catch a 7 because I got to cull out a 3, right? Or 3 something. I mean, I really wasn't kind of like trying to calculate to the exact ounce or anything, because I was just worried about giving everything I could to the very end. But I've never been like, I want to go back and catch that fish and apologize for what I was thinking about to him in my mind, mind. And I'm like, dude, I mean, I really was. I have never been, and just in my mind, that disappointed to catch a 5.5 because I knew it was short. But then to come to find out, and I look back on it, and I'm like, man, I'm glad I didn't do anything stupid, and that fish got away for a mistake because I was upset at the fish. I wasn't upset, I guess. It was just like, oh man, I went back there. I had to film the hunt for monster bass, and I went back in that area the next day to kind of reminisce and apologize to that 5 pound, 5 ounce bass. And anything I said negative about him in my mind, I told him I took it all back.
That is awesome. That is actually super cool to know. Just going back, because I mean, yeah, if you think about it, like I can see exactly what you mean. Where it's like, well, if that fish came off, like it wouldn't have been big enough to win anyways. Well, in turn, it was mighty big enough to win the Derby.
And then I mean, the scenarios, like you take all of that and you think about, everything that it transpired through those last 3 minutes. Yeah, I could be driving to REDCREST right now, so mad at myself for not, catching the 5.5 and letting it get away, maybe doing something that, out of the ordinary. But, at the end of the day, my mindset right then, those last 10 to 15 minutes, Ott had caught a big one. He was right there. Ayler was right there. He was coming full speed. And then again, I'm like, I don't want to finish third. That was my mindset. That was my goal, was to fish as hard as I could to hold on to second, but knowing one swing of the rod could be the one that, catapults us to the top.
Yeah, that was. I think the way that, like, I'm talking with Panger at BTO, the way he described it, with him talking with Justin Lucas, of like how he exited out of the stream like a minute too early and didn't realize what had happened. I think that was like the funniest part about it. It was just like, no, Chris won. What are you talking about? Yeah, the whole way that went down, that was super cool. And for anybody that didn't get a chance to see the final minutes of it, I will actually link Major League Fishing stream and give you guys like the whole time to go see the whole prelude, workup, and breakdown of that. Because I mean, really, you had like, it was the last 30 minutes, you had two crucial catches, obviously the one at the end, but you had one that was about like 20 minutes to go, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess the last hour and a half, I was pretty dialed in. I knew that was the time, and I was in an area where I have caught giant bass that time of year with the conditions the way they were set up. Nobody on the water except for, I have to say, the fans were fantastic. They stayed away, from the vegetation. They never came up too close. I mean, it was pretty cool, how that operated. But really, just to be out there, to be alone in an area where giants are swimming around, I was pretty dialed in that last hour and a half. And the fish catch that I go back to is where, you don't, when you get a backlash with fluorocarbon, you want to make sure that you pull it all the way out, because if you don't, you'll end up, what'll happen is what happened to me on that other 5-pounder that I caught. And that was, the line broke in the reel. It wasn't a backlash. It had broke down where I never pulled it all the way out, and I had pinched it. So it had broke. So I was taking the line, I was wrapping it around my hand. And that was the one that I look back on. I was having fun. I was happy. I was excited. And, I was catching fish the way that I wanted to catch them, where I wanted to catch them. And to catch that fish, to get that fish in the boat, was kind of the one that I look back on is, good Lord was watching out for me on that one. To be able to land that fish was just staying in tune with the hook set, almost like I was fly fishing.
Yeah, I feel like if there was one that had more room for error, it was definitely that one over your buzzer beater fish. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, that was one that was kind of shocking to me. But then, I kind of stayed with it and drifted down through to where the water started. You could see water was starting to get a little muddy as I got more into the wind. But there was a stick in the set of a lily pads, and I'm like, man, there should be a good one there. And it was like a 412 or something. I don't even remember. But what I look back on in that event, I was trying to catch 7 and 8 and 9 pounder right then, in those areas, that time of year. I mean, I never caught a fish over 7 pounds the entire tournament, but I look back at that day and it was almost kind of like just, I don't want to say grinding it out because I don't like that term. I would say just ounce by ounce, inching your way, 4 pounder after 5 pounder after 4 pounder, to get to the top. I mean, that's kind of the way that event went down for me. I kept thinking one swing was going to be a 7, 8 pounder, 10 pounder, but it was, it never worked out that way. It just was enough with the 5s and the 4s and then 1 6 pounder.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was one of the things I really wanted to ask you. So I just came back from Florida as well. I spent some time, actually fished the Hobie event that was on the Harris Chain, and it was the first time I've ever fished for bass down in Florida. I've had family there forever, but every time we go down, that's my time because I'm from Buffalo, New York. That's my time to go fish for saltfish. So like that's
Yeah.
the one time a year I get to do that. But when it comes to those pads and the isolated pads, for people like myself, and it's your first time going down there, there's so many of them. They're all over the lake. It can almost be overwhelming. Is there any rhyme or reason to trying to break those down to find which ones are more high percentage than the others?
That's a question that we get asked time and time and time again, especially being from Florida, having a lot of success in Florida. But really, how do you know, look at a grass patch, lily pad patch, hyacinths, hydrilla. It's the same for Gunnersville. You in the mid, late year where there's hydrilla and milfoil mats just scattered throughout the whole entire lake, and there's miles and miles of it. Like, how do you break that down? Like, where do you find the fish? We can tell you. You look at the points, you look at the little indentions, and all of that. When you get out there, it means nothing. I mean, the point you can kind of figure out. But what I try to teach these, or tell these high school kids and this younger generation that is so good, that has the ability to look at technology and kind of get it dialed in and try to figure it out. You're right. When you get on the water and you look at how much it is, and it's like, okay, what's he even talking about? I'm on the water. You spending the time to try to dissect a lily pad patch or grass fish are. They always set up differently. Sometimes they're on the outside, sometimes they're on the inside, sometimes they're in the middle. A lot of the time winks, but not all of the time. So I think that's one of the things that when you get out there on the water, and especially in Florida where the vegetation is vast all the time, you have to get out there, remember where you got a bite, pay attention to where you caught a fish, because look at it, kind of look around, because that will tell you probably where you're going to catch your next fish. Because they usually, like I said, if they're on the inside, it's like finding a needle in the haystack. But when you find the needle, there's a bunch more there. There's a bunch of needles in there. So that's kind of the way I look at it. If they're on the inside and you catch one, then you're going to stay on the inside. You'll catch a lot more.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one thing I learned as well, and I love your input on it, is like, especially up here in New York with our grass fish, if you flip in there, chances are if you don't get flip on that first, you don't get bit on the first drop, there's probably not a fish around. Whereas Florida, if you flip in there and you don't get bit, you pull it out, chances are you miss some fish. Where if you leave it in there for 10 seconds, your line will start swimming away. That type of deal. Like patience is much more of a virtue down in Florida than any other place in the country. What do you think about that?
Oh, I agree 100%. That's why the worm is so dominant down there, because of how slow you have to fish. Sometimes you pitch in there and they bite right away, but like that event we were in, it had a little cold front come through at the beginning, and the second day of that tournament, for me, I caught a really big one, and I went into an area that I had found in practice, and I found it by pulling a little bit of line out. I mean, I knew it was a good area, but I was getting some little bites, and I'm like, man, there's got to be some good ones in here. And I'm flipping, and I pull some backlash out, and I pick it up, and it's swimming off, and I'm like, man, that's a good one. And I didn't have a hook, but I could tell it was a big fish. So what I did is I started flipping in there, letting it sit, just like you're saying. Let it sit, pop it, don't, and it swim off. And I'm like, okay, the fish are in here. I just have to fish a little bit different,
Right.
a little bit slower.
Yeah. People in Florida that are like, for me anyway, when they see all that stuff, like, oh, I'm gonna go, buzz around with a frog, and you can throw a chatterbait, which will work with like chatter wise, and you can catch fish here and there. But it definitely seems like, to your point, the worm is always like when you're going super slow and creeping it. That's always what catches the bigger ones of the day.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. We should get him back here in a second.
Just
Oh, he might be losing service. So we might be able to get him back here in a second. He is driving down the thruway, so he'll probably pick back up here quick. There we go. We got you.
How about now?
Good.
Sorry about that.
You're
Through
good.
the woods.
You're good.
The grandmother's house we go.
So yeah, I think we lost you when you started talking about the worm.
Yeah, I was saying for 45 years that I fished in Florida, it's always been the same, slow
Right.
down and take your time and you'll catch the big ones.
Yeah, for sure. Now, going into your transitioning, obviously coming off a high, off a win, confidence going your way, but looking ahead this week to Major League Fishing REDCREST, what things might you expect for, obviously don't want you to divulge anything you don't want people to know going in this week, but
Yeah.
kind of your outlook on the week.
Yeah, that's a special place. I've got some family there. It's a special place for my family, on my wife's side. And, I've spent a lot of time there. And, that's NASCAR country. Spent some time over there doing the Ryan Newman and the Tony Stewart tournaments that they did for the SPCA to raise money for that. And spent some, days over there during summer break with the kids and just had a blast. Lake Norman is loaded. I'm excited to get there, and I'm really excited about the weather. I had all this stuff that I was planning on fishing deep, and I still got it on, but I think I might take it all off and just stick with the shallows. I mean, if you look at it, the dogwoods are blooming. There's buds on the trees. You got the sun shining. Spring's coming early right now, and I have to say I'm excited. That kind of turns it up a notch for me.
Yeah, it's gonna make the event, like I was talking with Thrift the other day, and how he was saying he was kind of hoping that it wasn't going to be this abnormally warm this time of year, so that he could run some of his winter stuff. But you mentioned the same thing, that this warming trend's gonna make things a little bit more of a even playing field, especially for a lot of guys that like to get up shallow. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see some epic finishes in this thing. We may not, but I mean, these guys are so good, and they, the last 5 minutes, they put themselves in position to catch a fish, because they know what they need. They will put themselves in a position where out of 40 guys, 20 guys, 10 guys, somebody's going to get a bite, you would think, to make it interesting for either the leader or the cut line. And I'm really looking forward to it, looking forward to getting out there. Lake Norman's beautiful. It's got a lot of boat docks. It offers everything to you, minus the grass.
Yeah, minus the grass, that's for sure. Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. So, having history there, obviously you mentioned families there and all, but, being the Florida boy, going up to spotted bass and, clear water and all that jazz. I mean, that's got to be an interesting type of transition to learn it.
Yeah, if a spotted bass is up real shallow, then I will, put him on the scales and put him into score tracker. But, they've got F1s in there, the Florida strain. And, cold fronts can knock those back a little bit different than anybody else. But, North Carolina is known for, its standard, original fish are pretty big. If you look at some of the lakes around, like, I guess it's, what is it, High Rock. And then you've also got the ones that we fished over there, some
Jordan.
of those power plant lakes. Yeah, Jordan. And those lakes they got big largemouth. So, that's something that I'm going to probably be focused on. And, hey, if at the end of the day everything goes south, I might have to go out there and catch a spot.
Well, especially with the format change this year too. I mean, that kind of plays into your wheelhouse.
Yeah, the five fish. Like I said, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited to see the format, the way that it is. Not for me, but for the majority of the anglers, for the majority of the fans, and everybody that decided that, hey, this might be the best way to go for you guys. I mean, it has its ups and it's got its downs. And five fish, though, it's what everybody else can do. It's what the world can relate to, just like any other professional sport. Football field, it's 100 yards, and every other football field in America is 100 yards.
Right. Yeah, I will say to that, to add to, I still love the fact that these fish are being let go too. And then we've had so many conversations with people on this show, like Fletcher Shryock and other folks from MLF and Bass alike, and talking about what the future might look like. And I still really appreciate the conservation aspect of what you guys do of putting the fish back. But looking ahead, this year you're coming. You have the hot hand coming into this one. You're coming off the win. Confidence is rolling, and I think one of the coolest parts of it is, I mean, the elephant in the room is your brother won it last year. So, I mean, dude, it's got to be pretty cool thinking that you might have a shot to do back-to-back Lane brothers for championships.
Dude, that'd be pretty wild right there. Yeah, Bobby's got that trophy sitting in his house, and I don't have one. I would like to get it. I know that we'll give it everything we got to the very end, just like we did at Kissimmee. I remember winning the Classic. I had won the first event down in Florida, and then went out to Shreveport. There again, it had grass, lily pads, and all that excuse me, all that crazy good stuff. But Lake Norman, Montgomery and Thrift and those guys, man, knowledge it's hard to beat, especially, I mean, I just, thought about that on Lake Kissimmee. I knew so much that it didn't matter which way the wind blew. I had the confidence that I was going to be able to put myself in position to catch the, really big fish. And I know that Montgomery and Thrift, they're thinking the exact same thing right now. And that's one advantage that they do have on the rest of the field. So,
yeah, when it's home lake, it can either go one of two ways. You never finish middle of the pack, it seems. It's either you crash and burn or you're top five. It usually seems to be the way it rolls out. But
yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. And what I was curious, eventually we'd love to get you and Bobby on the same show to talk about stuff like this. But do you ever, because it seems like you and Bobby obviously fish very similar. Do you guys end up finding each other throughout events or running into each other coming out of the same places?
Yeah, that's very seldom that it happens. I look back at the Classic. I look back at a number of Major League Fishing events that we have fished. He'll be on one end of the lake and I'll be on the other, but yet our weights are tied. I just, he'll be 21st, I'll be 21st. Our weights are tied after the first day. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at that. And the way that we fished together, we grew up together, we were taught by the same people, and we fish very, very similar. And most of the times it's never in the same, we're on complete opposite ends of the lake.
Right.
And I think that's what's crazy about it is doing the different things, and he might be catching them out deep and I might be catching them shallow, but we end up with the same weight, very, very close every single time. Now there's been a few times where it's been switched, but you know, we grew up doing it. It's something that we've done since we were 3 years old. Me, Arnie, Bobby, we get up in the morning, wake my mom up. They take us out in the John boat. We throw the John boat with a paddle in the back of old beat up station wagon, and my mom would take us, would drop us off in the pit, and we would stay there all day and fish. I mean, that's what we did. It was the greatest memories as kids. Um, we just kind of fed off of each other, and of course, yeah, every day was a competition even back then. And then we just kind of kept growing up and following and chasing our dreams, working hard every day, full-time jobs, supporting families, and doing that. And then when the door opened up to actually have, you know, Bobby went first on the FLW side, and then I was able to make it on the bass side. And then, you know, of course, Major League Fishing came, and you know, it's been quite a journey for both of us.
I always love hearing those stories of like talking about the John boat or the canoe or the whatever the means was to get started. That is always the intriguing part for me because it's to a relative point, majority of anglers, their routes into it, like whether dad or grandpa getting them into it, are usually the same. But in regards to like their route to get on the water is always somewhat different, which I always find very intriguing. But
Yeah,
it's cool to look back at those routes for
yeah,
sure.
we
There's
was
always something freeing
new
about like.
BMX.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, like new BMX bikes when we had them, when we get them for Christmas. I mean, that's what we did. We'd ride them down to the creek and catch crawfish, and then figure out what we're going to do with those. Sometimes we'd use them for bait, but most of the time we'd put them in our aquarium. We'd catch mice and feed the snakes. I mean, you know, it was an adventure when we were growing up, and we called ourselves the Adventure Boys. And we had a little pack. We'd run off into the orange groves. You know, might hide a can of, you know, tobacco back there, back in the old days, around a tree somewhere where your parents didn't find it. You know, just
That's
those
awesome.
kind of things. Those memories as kids were really good. Smokeless tobacco, by the way, or non tobacco. It's the, what is that Josh Bertrand sponsored by?
Oh, Smoky Mountain, I think it is.
Smoky Mountain. There you go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Isn't it it's very interesting to me how and I'm to this too. I love gadgets. I love, you know, shiny objects just because I'm an angler. We're naturally just drawn to shiny objects. But, you know, the boats these days, they're like essentially battleships, as we call them. But
Mm-hmm.
there's always something, and we're always kind of like reaching for that. And it's so cool to go on it, use that. But there's something freeing about going back to the roots, getting on a John boat with no motor, just a paddle, and no cameras, no nothing, and just fishing. There's something absolutely freeing about that.
No, man, it is as free as a bird. I got a 10-foot John boat for my youngest son, and put a paddle in there. And here's the thing: what we learned is you could always paddle faster from the front of the boat in a John boat. You just keep going. That was probably one thing that was the coolest thing, and paddle from the front. So things like that, it was cool. You know, speaking of the front of the boat, I think that it's out now. They came out with it. They're going to come out with it at REDCREST. The new power pole move trolling motor. You know, it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen on the front of a boat as far as the trolling motor goes.
Yeah, I've been seeing a bunch of the stuff flowing. I think the official launch was yesterday. So obviously, recording on a
Yeah.
Saturday, but Friday they came out. There's some pretty impressive stuff that came out about it, man. I'm looking forward to seeing it in person this week at the expo. I know obviously they should be there. Is there anything else that people should be looking out for if they're visiting the expo this week in Charlotte?
Yeah, I mean, free stuff. Man, that's when everybody comes out. They give away hats and T-shirts and towels and buffs and masks and, you know, lures, and I'm sure rods, probably. They're giving a ton of stuff, but I think just come out, have a good time, enjoy it, and go by the power pole booth and check out that new power pole move trolling motor, because I promise you, you will not hear it.
You have to see it first. You won't hear it. That's
That's
awesome.
right.
Yeah. So obviously another reason for folks to go visit the expo too is there's gonna be a lot of anglers there. Hopefully, if all things go right, we won't be seeing Chris at the expo until the final day. But hopefully, what you guys can do is go see some anglers, talk fishing with people. There'll be a lot of cool people to go see there. But man, I'm gonna wrap this up here soon. I got one last question for you, but before we get to the last question of the show, I know you guys talked about it a little bit on Bass Talk Live with Matt Pangrak, but watching him live on Clark's Hill, man, Cal Lane, it's got to be cool to see the Lane legacy being carried on.
Dude, that's a really good question. I, for the first time in 18 years, sat on the other side, sat on the couch, had it live, air, however the kids do it, where they air screen it to your
Airplay,
TV.
yeah.
Airplay. I was a nervous wreck. I mean, I really was, but at the same time, I was like, man, this is so cool. Not just because it was Cal. I mean, you got Dakota catching an 8-2 after he already missed it, but having my son in it, and I mean, I couldn't have been more proud as a dad, but more proud of him for doing it on it.
Uh-oh. Oh, man, we're getting to the good part. Okay, we'll see if we can get him back in here. I'm sure it'll be just like last time. He'll pop right back in. These dang throughways. All right, I think he's loading back in here. We'll get him in a second. But it was, if you guys have not seen that coverage from Clarks Hill Lake, that lake showed out. Like it was a fun live to watch. They were catching big ones, dramatic finishes. Wouldn't really say actually dramatic finishes. It did look like Dakota Eber wasn't going to win it on that final day because he had I think it was the last hour or two, he caught fish to finally cull up to get up on top. But he didn't have a big bag on the last day, which made things pretty interesting. But Cal Lane, like we were talking about here with Chris, he was live most of the day catching fish on a buzzbait. Some really cool topwater eats. It was a lot of fun to watch. And we're going to keep trying to get Chris back in here. I think we got him. And we can wrap this thing up here. But we got you back.
Sorry, man. Sorry.
You're good.
That. Yeah,
you are good. No worries at all.
I was very proud of him. The way that he handled himself, at 21 years old. I mean, we were fishing weekend tournaments, me and my brothers having the time of our lives, for him to be out there on his own, doing it the way that he does it, the way that he wants to fish. I couldn't be more proud, but I have to say, I was addicted to watching it. It really was like, oh my gosh, this is some cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was regardless if it's invitationals, BPT, bass, and like NPFL at this point, like if there's live fishing on now, my boss, I have to say sorry. I mean, there's gonna be a less productive week because I'm gonna be glued to the TV, especially when Cal Lane's throwing a buzzbait around shallow timber. I'm gonna be watching. I'm gonna be glued to that.
I know I wasn't even watching him as much as I was the buzzbait that he was throwing. So it was pretty cool. Congrats to that whole top 10 and Clarks Hill, and what an awesome deal. It's really cool to watch this younger generation, what they have access to and the way that they use it. It's pretty cool, as far as fishing.
Yeah, the learning curve is ever growing from a shorter window in regards to the information you have, and especially being that the sport, like guys like yourself, are so accessible in regards to they can listen to you on shows like this, or they can see you at the boat ramp, and you guys are so amazing after events, being able to just take hours to talk with people. It's not like you can do that with guys in the NBA or NFL, that type of deal. So it's a lot easier to get better faster, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And there again, time on the water is most important. One thing we're going to be working on, we've already started working on it, but since these fish are so accessible now, since these fish can't really run and hide anymore, one thing we're going to work on and making sure that we, hopefully do throughout the country through MLF and the MLFAA is to start getting these fish back into the lake, putting more fish into the lake, hopefully, because there's way more fishermen now with high school and college and every tournament angler out there now. The sport's growing. We need to make sure that we take care of these fisheries so that the generations, to come have the same opportunity that we have as kids and as we have as adults now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point. For next week, we've had him on the show a bunch of times. Steve Barden, who runs the Major League Fishing's Fisheries Management Division, we've had him on a bunch of shows, and our guests or our viewers really love listening to him, obviously because he's packed full of knowledge. We're gonna have him on one of our episodes that we do this week. We're gonna let you guys launch and start getting taken off, and we're gonna be doing like a live in-show podcast at the launch for REDCREST, and Steve's gonna be one of our guests for that. So that's a great point of just like the strides that you guys are taking to improve the fisheries, give back to the fisheries, because that's such a great point. And I've been working full time in the fishing industry now for only 3 years, but in the 3 years I have been, the amount of heavy transition of conservation talk that I've been a part of and listening to, and the things that people have ideas of because of forward-facing sonar, giving back to these species, making sure that we can prolong these fisheries, because you can go build like we were talking earlier, you can go build an NFL field anywhere. You can't just go and build a new lake and have it be done in a couple of weeks. It's one thing where you can only make as many lakes. You've got to take care of the ones that we got.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, most of all these agencies, Stephen Barton, of course, and these agencies like Lake Norman and a lot of these fisheries, they don't need anything. They sustain themselves. They got tons and tons and tons of bass in them, and it's great. But places like, some of these highly pressured lakes that people love to go to, where there's never a empty spot at the boat ramp when those fish are hitting the banks, those are the ones you got to just make sure you just take care of just a little bit, and a little bit of help goes a long way.
Yep, giving Mother Nature the right nudge in the right direction for sure.
Yep.
But Chris, I got one more question for you. But I really want to say thank you for taking the time out while you're on your way up to REDCREST and getting on here with us, dropping some knowledge. And it's been a pleasure to chat with you, and hope to see you this week at REDCREST. But the last question I got for you is, if you could sit down with any 3 individuals, they don't have to be in the fishing industry. They could be anybody. They could be alive now or alive 1,000 years ago. It doesn't matter. You want to sit down with them, have a nice steak, have a beer, and pick their brain. Who are you going to invite?
Man, I would invite Jordan Spieth. I would invite
golfer, right?
Tim, golfer. Tim Tebow. And then one more, I would have to say, that's a good one. I'd probably have to invite my dad.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. I gotta ask though, because Florida legend Tim Tebow. Why Tebow? Just because of that?
Do I now?
So why Tebow? Just because he's a Florida legend?
He is a Florida legend. I like what he stands for. I think that, watching him through, the Florida years as a football player, and then off into other things, but being the selfless person that he is, I thought is pretty cool. It'd always be cool, like, to take him fishing. But the same with Jordan Spieth. I mean, to be at 21 years old, win the FedEx Cup, and, win $21 million at 21, a lot of things can go south. And I think that they're good role models for these kids that are growing up, these kids that are looking at people. And, we all know the failures of the people that get rich quick and have success and fame throughout a real short career and see the downfalls that they have, to see the success that they've had. I would have to say, I think that's pretty cool. What is this? What is the secret? And then I think the secret to a lot of us is our dad, and that's probably why, the role of being a dad is so important, and that's why I would want him there as well.
That's awesome. I couldn't have said it better. Well, Chris, seriously, thank you again for taking the time out. Drive safe. Looking forward to seeing you at REDCREST this week, and hopefully looking forward to seeing you back on live throughout the whole weekend on the final day.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care, Chris. We'll talk to you soon. That was awesome. Again, big thank you to Chris for taking time out to join us on the show today. Again, we were trying to get him this week, but the last thing that we ever like to do on this show is try to force guys to get on the show or anything like that, or try to time crunch it. Obviously, it's always cool to get guys, their first kind of thoughts after they win a big event or anything that sort. But we're never in a huge rush to get those people on, because, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, family time after a long, grueling event, like take it to BPT, for example, he had a couple days of practice. And if it wasn't in Florida, he'd have a couple of days of travel. And then you have actually, it was really more like a week long worth of tournament days. Now, granted, obviously he's closer to home a little bit, but family time after that, because he's locked in. He's locked in on the tournament. He's fishing. The last thing we want to do is take up any family time, because like this, he's got to turn right around and go up to REDCREST. And who knows, if he's fishing invitationals, he would have had to turn right around, go to Clarks Hill, and then turn right around and go to REDCREST. That's not much time with family, so we don't want to get in the way of that. But seriously, appreciate him taking the time out today while he was headed up to REDCREST to drop some knowledge on us, talk about his wins, talk about some pretty cool stuff that's going on at REDCREST, as well as going on with Cal. Great finish on the invitationals, which that invitational event was super cool. Like I was saying earlier, Clarks Hill showed out, and Dakota Eber, holy crap. Talk about probably the hottest angler in fishing right now in regards to, he won already Toyota this year, had some amazing finishes last year, pretty much flying under the radar, did really well at Cayuga. There was several different events that he could do well. And I would look to him to have a really good event here on Lake Norman as well. The dude just has the hot hand. He's got to be one you're going to ride with here. He can get up, and he showed it this week. He can get up shallow in those bushes and catch them. Knocked a big bag on day one of Clarks Hill, and then can go out and live scope with the best of them and fish out deep and catch big bags doing that too. But again, big thank you to Chris for jumping on there. I know there's a little bit of audio issue here and there. It was a little spotty while he was on the throughway. I don't know if anybody else picked it up too, but there's a little bit of squeaking. Almost sounds like there's a little bit of buzzbait action. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, when you got a buzzbait riding shotgun in your passenger seat, it does that little clacking. And I bet my bottom dollar that was a buzzbait that was clacking against the rod in his passenger seat. But as always, I appreciate you guys tuning into these. Again, we're solo for today's show, but we'll have Andy for the rest of the week, because as you guys listen to this, we either in air on the plane headed down, or we've landed and are getting our things ready to go to do some shows and hang out at the expo all week. We'll be in Charlotte until Monday when we fly home back to the snowy tundra we call Buffalo, as we're literally getting a winter storm as I record this episode. But something that he talked about too, with that Chris mentioned of like Tebow and all these guys going fishing, something cool to call out. I don't know if anybody's seen the thing floating around, but like Steve Harvey out there catching big bass and calling attention to getting outdoors. I think that was pretty cool. But it's also big shout out to a recent guest of ours who won the Toyota on Havasu, Todd Klein. Took out Selena Gomez fishing. Like, I mean, you got to be a pretty popular man and know what the heck you're doing if one of the biggest celebrities in all of LA, that type of deal, is going to hook you up for a guide trip. I mean, that's a big shout out to Todd Klein. If you guys are ever out in the area, I mean, that's one dude that's going to put you on them, probably regardless of where you go. But yeah, guys, I appreciate all of you tuning into this one. Again, if you are interested in getting some, if you're already set up with Do It molds and you want to get some additional molds, hooks, etc., or you'd like to just get started making your own jig heads, your own soft plastics, your own whatever it may be, Do It molds is capable of it. And if you're able to, try to get that this week, sales going on from the 6th until the 12th of March. That is code Serious15. I'll have it down below in the links as well as social media. Again, it's Serious15. That does not work with jig kits. So the kits we're talking, you're already saving money when you buy those kits. We're just talking about off your entire order. As long as you're not buying kits, you're going to save 15% off your entire order there with our friends at Do It Molds. We have a lot of content coming up with them, especially this coming year. We're getting more and more developed in regards to learning what we're doing with it, as well as once I get my own place, we'll be firing on all cylinders when it comes to content. But again, Andy is busy today. We don't get him. He's going to be a pretty busy man the next 2 months. So bear with us. You guys are stuck with me for some episodes coming up, but we'll probably try to sneak Deacon on here as co-host, and then maybe get some other buddies that we have to help come co-host here and there. But as always, folks, we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one, which actually, before we go, I apologize. Should have mentioned this earlier in the show, in the introduction. This week is going to be a very interesting week in regards to episodes. So this is a Tuesday morning drop, not live. There's no Tuesday night live this week. We're going to have a Wednesday morning episode, a Thursday morning episode, and a Friday morning episode. So you can look forward to those. We're going to have episodes for the rest of the week. Tomorrow's episode, as well as Thursday's episode, are going to be relatively later in the day, probably around that 10 o'clock time frame, because we'll have recorded it that morning. If we have a capability to go live, we'll try to do that. We'll try to go live that morning with you guys. But in regards to trying to make it the best experience we can, if the signal's not too hot, we're just gonna record it and then drop it immediately once we've recorded it, so that it's somewhat on course with on location with you guys. So regardless, look forward to that. Pay attention to socials. Again, reach out if you guys are going to be at REDCREST. We'll be there. We might or might not have some free hats to give out if you do see us. So if you can, reach out, slide in the DM, shoot us an email. Looking forward to seeing everybody down in Charlotte this week. But as always, folks, appreciate you guys listening. And hey, we'll see you tomorrow.